Now, under the Workers' Rights Act, back in 2024, before I took office, there was already a provision relating to labor contractors. However, there was never any regulation proclaimed to give effect to this concept of labor contractor because a number of concerns had been raised by trade unions. So accordingly, a tripartite meeting was called under my chairmanship on the 10th of March 2026 to gather the views of trade unions, small planters, Mauritius Cane Industry Association and Authority, and other stakeholders. After discussion, the following points were agreed. And I stress, representatives of trade unions were at that meeting. So the agreed points were as follows. First, regulation will be made for the registration of labor contractors, and labor contractors will be permitted to supply migrant workers to qualified hirers only in the agricultural sector, subject to certain eligibility criteria being applicable to them. Only cooperative, federation, and association having small planters and farmers as members would be eligible to act as labor contractors. The migrant workers will be assigned to small planters and breeders as defined in the Small Farmers Welfare Fund Act 2002. Safeguards will be introduced to uphold the principle of equal remuneration for work of equal value as provided for under Section 26 of the Workers' Rights Act. The employment contract between labor contractor and the worker would also clearly specify the occupation in which the worker will be engaged and the rate of remuneration applicable. The labor contractor and the hirer shall jointly and severally be liable for occupational safety and health of the worker, including for diseases potentially contracted by workers related to his occupation. The lodging accommodation shall be provided by the labor contractor, who should also apply for relevant permits. The worker should have the choice to either arrange for his own food or opt for the labor contractor to provide same, and in the latter case, the amount to be withheld from his remuneration must be specified in the employment contract and should not exceed 3,000 rupees per month. And finally, the Mauritius Cane Industry Authority would act as a facilitator, and together with my ministry, the Mauritius Cane Industry Authority will be responsible for ensuring that the rights of the migrant workers are respected and upheld, and employers as well as the hirers deliver on their obligation. The Ministry of Agro-Industry, Food Security and Blue Economy concurred with the points of consensus and also informed a list of qualified hirers, that is, the small planters and small breeders, will be compiled and provided for this pilot project by the Mauritius Cane Industry Authority, and B, upon their arrival, training on local agricultural practices will be provided by the Mauritius Cane Industry Authority and the Food and Agricultural Research and Extension Institute to all migrant workers on the occupation that they will engage thereafter. On the 27th of March 2026, government agreed to regulations being made under Section 29A, 29B, and 124 of the Workers' Rights Act for the registration of labor contractor and to enable the supply of migrant workers to small planters and small farmers by the labor contractors in the agricultural sector. Madam Speaker, subsequently, my ministry held further consultation with the Ministry of Agro-Industry and the Mauritius Cane Industry Authority with a view to finalizing the draft Workers' Rights Labor Contractor Agricultural Sector Regulation 2026. And further provisions were included in the regulation to ensure the occupational safety and health of workers, that adequate safeguard will be provided in the regulations. The registration for labor contractor would be valid for 3 years initially. On 18th July 2026, the regulations were published in the Government Gazette. As regard to part A of the question, following extensive consultation with the Ministry of Agro-Industry, Food Security, Blue Economy and Fisheries, the Mauritius Cane Industry Authority, the trade union and representative of small planters, government decided that only registered federation, association, or cooperative society having as members small planters and small breeders may apply to be registered as labor contractor. No private company, no employment agency, no recruitment agency, or other service providers will be eligible to act as labor contractor under the regulation. Pursuant to Regulation 5.1, the labor contractor can only supply migrant workers to small planters or small breeders who are registered. Now, as you know, small planters and small breeders are limitatively defined in the Small Farmers Welfare Fund Act. Furthermore, all sugarcane planters need to be registered with the Sugar Insurance Fund Board, who operates under the aegis of the Ministry of Agro, to supply the cane to the mills and benefit from subsidies and income after sale. For vegetable, tea plantation, and other crops, small planters need to be registered through the Small Farmers Welfare Fund, and they are given a membership card with an identification number. Therefore, it is very easy to identify who are the small farmers and who are the small planters. So we are not opening the floodgate for any hirer in agricultural sector. It will be only the registered small farmers and small breeders who will be able to act as hirer. Now, before a federation, association, or cooperative society may even apply to my ministry to register as a labor contractor, it must be validly registered with the registrar of association, or the registrar of cooperative societies. For association, before an association is registered, the association for small planters or small breeders, they need to file a copy of the rules with the registrar of association. The registrar of association will have to verify under the rules whether membership is for small breeders and small farmers. In addition, they need to supply a list of members to the registrar of association. Again, the registrar of association can verify that they are only small breeders and small farmers. The registrar of association can ask for further information in case of uncertainty. For example, he can require a copy of the registration card of the small breeder and the small planter to ensure that only the federation, corporate, and association who has as members small planters and small breeders will qualify under this regime. And a similar regime is applicable for cooperative society. Again, for the registrar of cooperative can ask for all information to ensure that the members are small breeders and small planters. In addition, Madam Speakers, the ministry will verify, my ministry will verify the authenticity of the documents submitted, including legal registration of the organization, its membership and composition and financial standing before we will license a labor contractor. There would be a technical committee which is going to examine application for labor contractor, which will consist, among others, of representative of my ministry, representative of agri-industry and the Prime Minister's office. So again, acting as another filter to ensure that only labor contractors who has as members small planters and small breeders would be given the permit to recruit for hire. And after registration, oversight will continue. Registration is valid for 3 years. In that period of time, there would be inspection carried out by officers of my ministry and the Labour Division and the Employment Division. The Mauritius Cane Industry Authority will also carry out the necessary investigation to ensure that the foreign workers are only recruited to work for small planters and small breeders. Now, with regard to the risk of labor contractor being used to bypass direct employer liabilities as set out in the P&Q, with due respect, this risk is totally misconceived. As per section 29B, subsection 2B of the Workers' Rights Act, the labor contractor is the employer of the migrant workers and assumes the corresponding employer obligations under the Workers' Rights Act. Section 26, subsection 1B of the Workers' Rights Act provides clearly that where an employer has recourse to a job contractor, the job contractor shall ensure that the remuneration of the worker employed by him is no less favorable than the employer employed by the principal employer when performing work of equal value. That section was applicable for job contractors. Now, in the regulation, we have a similar provision applicable to labor contractors. So now the labor contractor must ensure that the hirer pays at least the same remuneration to the migrant worker than the remuneration that they are paying to their own employees, to ensure the concept of same pay for same work. In addition, Section 29C of the Workers' Rights Act provides for joint liability between the labor contractor and the hirer employer in specified circumstances, such as the payment of remuneration, safety, health, and welfare of workers, thereby ensuring that the rights and the entitlement of migrant workers remain fully protected. The liability of hirer employer is also clear from Section 29C, subsection 6 of the Workers' Rights Act. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the possibility of an employer trying to avoid liability by having recourse to a labor contractor simply doesn't arise, because the hirer will also be jointly and severally liable with the labor contractor if there is any breach of occupation, health and safety rules, or non-payment of remuneration, or overtime not being paid. All these Workers' Rights Act, there will be joint liability for the labor contractor and the hirer employer. As regards Part B of the question, concerning enforcing compliance and preventing illegal sector hopping by migrant workers, as I mentioned previously, there will be post-registration inspection carried out by officers of my ministry at the level of the Labour Division and the Employment Division. These inspections will, of course, include verifying that the migrant workers have been assigned exclusively for small planters and small breeders, and that the work actually being performed corresponds to the job, the occupation and job description specified in the employment contract. With regard to remuneration, Regulation 6 is clear that the remuneration relating to the job category or occupation will be regulated by the applicable remuneration regulation applicable to the agricultural sector. The applicable remuneration regulation are, for example, the Field Crop and Orchard Workers Remuneration Regulation, the Livestock Workers Remuneration Regulation, the Sugar Industry Agricultural Workers Regulation, the Sugar Industry Non-Agricultural Worker Regulation, the Tea Industry Workers Regulation. Furthermore, pursuant to Regulation 5.2, the rate of remuneration applicable to the job category which the migrant worker has agreed to perform will already be listed in the employment contract. For example, if a migrant worker, according to his employment contract, he will have to work for a small planter for a certain period of time, and then for a small breeder for another period of time. For the work he's performing with the small planter, he has to be paid at least the same rate as provided in the applicable remuneration. Similarly, for the work performed with a small breeder, he will have to be paid at the rate specified in the applicable remuneration. And all this have to be set out in his employment contract. Now, as regards the contract of employment between labor contractor and migrant worker, A template is currently being worked out by officers of my ministry in consultation with the State Law Office. The regulations at Regulation 5.2 already provides the information to be included in that employment contract and includes A, the qualification and skills of the migrant worker, B, the job description of the task or occupation to be performed by the migrant worker, C, the rate of remuneration applicable to the job category in respect of which the worker is offered employment and other terms and conditions of his employment, D, a clause prohibiting the migrant worker taking up employment outside agricultural sector, and E, the corresponding monthly deduction to be made from his remuneration where the migrant worker opts to be provided with food. And there are also other information to be provided by the labor contractor to the worker under Section 29B, subsection 4 of the Workers' Rights Act. As regards the contract between the hirer and the labor contractor, which is also specified in the PNQ, there is no prescribed format for the agreement between the labor contractor and the hirer, and therefore we don't have a template at the level of the ministry. However, the labor contractor must ensure that the hirer employer does not request the migrant worker to perform tasks which fall outside the scope of his job description and which requires qualification or skills other than those specified in his employment agreement.
Thank you. Yes. First supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the Honourable Minister for his reply. He stated in his reply that tripartite meetings were held and that trade unions were agreeable to the concept, that new concept of labor contractor with certain conditions. Can I ask the Honourable Minister how many such meetings were held, and will he table the notes of meeting where the trade unions said that they are agreeable to the concept of labor contractor upon certain conditions?
There was one meeting held on the 10th of March 2026. Representative of workers' organization included representative of the joint negotiating panel, the CTSP, FPU, and Federation of Agricultural Allied Industries and other workers' union. I'll have to check with State Law Office. If there is no issue with tabling the minutes, I will table it.
Okay. Second question.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Can the Honourable Minister inform the House whether the first recruitment of workers under these new regulations, first he said, will be done on a pilot basis? Does he confirm that? And whether the first importation will be restricted to 1,000 labourers only or more?
I confirm that this is being done on a pilot basis. And may I remind the Honourable Leader of Opposition that this is an initiative by the Ministry of Agro to try to ensure that small planters don't desert their arable land. So we'll see on the first step. We have not set a limit on the number of workers to be recruited. And we have not yet received any application for job contractors. So we will have to see how many federation, association, cooperative are applying to be registered for labor. And then in consultation with the Ministry of Agro, we'll see whether we need to restrict the necessary permits.
Your colleague stated that there will be a first batch of 1,000 workers and then a second batch of 2,500 workers. Can the Honourable Minister inform the House when the first batch of labourers is expected to reach the country and where will they be accommodated? Because his colleague stated that they might be accommodated in the quarters of Metro Express workers. Will you confirm that?
Like I said, Madam Speaker, we have not received, as at today, any request for registration of labour contractor. But what is already provided in the regulation is that the labor contractor will obviously need to make arrangement for the accommodation of all the migrant workers, and the appropriate lodging accommodation permit will have to be sought. Clearance will have to be received from the Ministry of Health to see the state of the building, and clearance will have to be sought from the from the Fire Clearance Department and from the local government authorities to see whether there is a building and land use permit. And then my ministry will issue the lodging accommodation permit. So I don't know. If, for example, you mentioned the use of the Metro Express, which had been used previously, which has been used, yes, which has been used previously, which
Don't talk to me.
with regard to the accommodation which had been used by Larsen and Toubro when they were constructing the Metro Express. If there is a request, of course, a request to use these premises as lodging and accommodation for the migrant workers, of course, this will be given due consideration by my ministry.
Yes, now you talk.
Yes.
Your next question.
Can the Honourable Minister confirm whether the first batch, I put it this way, of 1,000 workers will be exclusively for the sugar sector, and will it be only for small planters or also for the corporate sector?
Okay, as I said, Madam Speaker, I didn't venture for the figure of 1,000. Okay, the labor contractor will be given a permit only to supply the migrant workers to small planters and small breeders. Now, small planters include small planters in the agriculture, in the sugar sector, and non-sugar, vegetables, tea planters. All these will be eligible as long as they fall within the definition of small planter under the law.
Next question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. With regard to the rate of remuneration, which we understand will be as per remuneration orders, can the Honourable Minister inform the House whether there will be two different salary levels, that is, the migrant workers' salary based on remuneration orders and that of local workers as per collective agreement signed?
Absolutely not. In Mauritius, we don't discriminate between Mauritian worker and foreign worker. So if there is a collective agreement and the rate applicable is more favorable to the employee than for the migrant worker, then that will be applicable. Because remember, I mentioned it, Madam Speaker, we made a specific provision, and that was one of the requests made by the trade unions, that we need to have equal pay for equal work. So in the remuneration in the regulation that we have enacted, it is clear that the hirer cannot pay more to a Mauritian worker than it is paying to a migrant worker. It will be the same rate, same value, same pay.
Thank you. Yes, your next question.
The Honourable Minister admitted some time back in this House that his ministry currently lacks the administrative power to impose penalties on employers who fail to renew work permits, and that the law will be amended to give the ministry power to sanction these illegal employers. May we know where matters are with regard to the new legislation?
Yes, we have already made a request to the State Law Office, and we have received legal advice from the State Law Office, and officers of our ministry are currently working on a series of administrative sanctions that can be imposed. And when the text is ready, we'll come to Parliament, because that will require legislative amendment. We can't do it by way of regulation.
On another note, Madam Speaker, may I ask the Honourable Minister whether he is aware that many seasonal workers of the sugar sector have not benefited from the Workfare Programme fund since the beginning of this year?
I'm not aware of it, but I certainly ask my officers to look into the matter, because the whole purpose of the welfare program is to come to the rescue of workers who have found themselves out of job through no fault of theirs, and give them at least for 1 year a minimum remuneration, a minimum allowance, so that they can keep on paying their debt, their obligations.
Yes?
Yes.
Another question?
Will the Honourable Minister inform the House how his ministry will monitor compliance across multiple specific remuneration regulations? For example, sugar sector versus tea sector rates when migrant workers will be deployed across different plantations in the country?
This is why, Madam Speaker, the regulations make clear that in the employment contract, we need to already specify what occupation, what grade the migrant worker is going to perform. And therefore, we will have the corresponding salary, and this work contract, like all work agreement between migrant worker and an employer in Mauritius, will be vetted at the level of my ministry. So the officers of my ministry will ensure that in the employment contract, for the grade that is specified in the contract, you will have the corresponding remuneration payable under the applicable remuneration order.
Yes. We're nearing the end. Do you have another question? Yes?
Yeah, I've got 2 more questions,
Okay.
Madam Speaker.
Okay,
Thank
I'll
you.
give you 2 questions.
Can the Honourable Minister inform the House what safeguards have been put in place by his ministry to prevent labour contractors from forcing migrant workers into performing tasks outside their scope of work?
Again, this is already in the law. You can't force, neither can the labor contractor nor the hirer employer, can they force a worker to perform work that is outside the scope of their employment contract. Now, we will carry out spot inspection, but I understand that officers from the Mauritius Cane Industry Authority also will be carrying out a spot check to ensure compliance.
Thank you. Last question.
But when he mentioned spot checks, he has only 10 officers in the migrant unit of his ministry. Now, last question, Madam Speaker. Will the Honourable Minister confirm that the agreement between the labour contractor and the migrant worker guarantee a minimum of working hours or a guaranteed basic salary if a small planter or breeder temporarily has no work available?
Yes, well, if we look at, for example, Regulation 7 of the regulation, duties of hirer employer, the hirer employer shall comply with the condition of employment, including the number of working hours and rest period for the migrant worker. And subsection 9, any person who contravenes these regulations shall commit an offence. So it's already catered for in the regulation. But I agree with the Leader of Opposition, we will need to have additional staff to ensure proper monitoring and inspection, and we can only turn to the Ministry of Finance to give us additional staff.
Thank you very much, everybody. So now we go to questions addressed to the Honourable Prime Minister. Honourable First Member for Vacqua-Floréal, please.
B 1081, s'il vous plaît.
Yes, Madam Speaker, as I previously stated in the House, Government has already initiated a number of measures to make up for the higher expenditure expected from the removal of the means testing of the stage age pension so that we can bring down the budget deficit and the public sector debt. One of the key measures being undertaken in the reprioritization of capital projects outlined in the budget and in the high-level committee chaired by the Secretary of the Cabinet has been set up to look into the reprioritization of the implementation of the capital projects while ensuring that economic growth is not adversely affected. This is one of the mitigation measures that is expected to rationalize spending in the capital budget that would potentially accentuate the impact of the expected additional spending on the stage age pension for the fiscal year 2026-2027, which amounts to about 6.2 billion rupees. That is additional expenditure that we have to see. Government is pursuing an investment-led growth model rather than a consumption-driven approach, and as such, investment in public sector projects, especially those that crowd in public investment, is vital to economic growth. With regard to Part A of the question, I'm informed that the criteria applicable for the reprioritization of projects are as follows. First, assessment of a project's preparedness and readiness for implementation. Projects with significant implementation challenges and risk of persistent bottlenecks such as land acquisition issues, way leaves, clearances and permits, and procurement delays may be reprioritized until the necessary conditions for successful delivery are in place. Second, we are reviewing a project's expected economic and social costs and benefits, value for money, and the availability of alternative options that could achieve similar objectives more effectively or at a lower cost. Third, consideration of the alternative financing models to ensure that the public sector investment projects are implemented as planned while reducing the fiscal burden. Fourth, assessment of the affordability and fiscal sustainability of a project, taking into account future funding requirements, operating and maintenance costs, cash flow implications, and any contingent liabilities. Projects that place excessive pressure on fiscal resources may be considered for rescheduling or scope reduction. With regard to Part B of the question, the House may wish to note that the motorway M4 project dates back to 2009 and forms part of the broader National Road Decongestion Program. In 2009, there were about 366,000 vehicles on our roads, compared to some 760,000 vehicles in 2026, which is an increase of almost 100%, Madam Speaker. The motorway M4 has been identified by government as a priority national infrastructure project to enhance regional connectivity, improve traffic circulation between the eastern, central, and northern regions of the island, and promotes balanced socio-economic development. Previous feasibility and detailed engineering studies have confirmed the project's technical feasibility and economic viability and established a preferred alignment extending approximately 29.7 kilometers from Bel Air Road to the Fallback roundabout on motorway M2. It will certainly contribute to rebalancing economic development, stimulating investment, creating employment during construction, supporting tourism, and promoting commercial and residential development along the north-eastern corridor of the island. Madam Speaker, regarding the criteria on preparedness and readiness for capital projects, I'm informed that the M4 highway project is fully ready in terms of land acquisition, updated technical and feasibility reports, and tender documents. The funding for this project has already been secured after successful discussions with the Government of India under the concessionary financing terms. Deferring such a project would also lead to more increase in cost in the future. I'm also informed that the environmental issues raised in the region of Fernie have been addressed. I'm further informed that the original plan has been modified so that the proposed corridor will not go through any environmental sensitive areas in the region of Fernie. Madam Speaker, I would think the Honourable Member is too young to remember, but in 2005, as Prime Minister, I took prompt action to prevent the highway project, which had already started to go through the Valley de Fernie despite objections from environmentalists, very valid objections. I went there to look for myself. Also, I must say, Madam Speaker, the African Development Bank refused to stop the project. They said it has already been funded, all the work has been done, therefore they would want to continue with the project. I summoned the representative of the African Development Bank to my office to explain to him why I will maintain my decision in spite of the fact that funds have already been provided for. We cannot allow this because it will be a textbook example of an ecological disaster. So, Madam Speaker, government is also working on several other measures, including examining the expenditure of each ministry, acting on the findings of the Director of Audit Report, and identifying areas where expenditure could be rationalized. This will be under the chairmanship of the Deputy Financial Secretary. B, identifying areas of duplication, inefficiency, and wastage, and implementing concrete actions to improve efficiency without compromising on the service delivery. C, reviewing our overall tax system with a view to enhancing its fairness, efficiency, and international competitiveness. And D, disposing of selected non-strategic assets, as well as the potential listing of certain state-owned enterprises on the stock exchange with a view to unlocking value and monetizing its shareholdings. The committee will ensure that in spite of very stringent budget constraints, public sector investment projects will remain impactful and transformational. Madam Speaker, the high-level committee, chaired by the Secretary of the Cabinet, will also look into the M4 motorway project as part of the broader assessment of capital projects included in the budget and the public sector investment program. It takes into account the importance of this transformational project, its strategic value, and the long-term benefits to the country. I also wish to inform the House, Madam Speaker, that a project monitoring and implementation unit will be set up shortly in my office. This unit will be headed by a professional from the private sector, and it will be empowered to have recourse to foreign expertise with a view to ensuring that major infrastructural projects are delivered in a timely manner and within the approved budget.
Thank you. Do you have a question? Yes.
Bon, merci, j'en ai quelques-unes. L'honorable
On
Premier
va dire
ministre,
une pour commencer.
Ok, merci. L'honorable Premier ministre a mentionné l'augmentation du parc automobile pour justifier la construction de la nouvelle autoroute M4. Il a aussi mentionné les long-term benefits. Est-ce que l'honorable Premier ministre peut nous dire si le comité a ou va examiner l'augmentation du trafic induit qui risque d'arriver suite à la construction de la nouvelle autoroute? Je m'explique. L'honorable Premier ministre est certainement au courant du phénomène qu'on appelle induced demand. Une étude avait été commandée cette année même par le gouvernement britannique et a conclu au fait que lorsqu'on augmente j'ai déjà posé la question, j'explique simplement. Lorsqu'on augmente, augmente la capacité routière, le trafic s'ajuste à la nouvelle offre et le parc automobile continue de croître et la congestion routière revient. Est-ce que ce phénomène a été pris en considération par le comité ou le sera pour l'avenir?
In fact, this happens already in Mauritius, in certain areas where the traffic is flowing correctly, and then you get all these bouchons de trafic at l'extérieur. They are looking at this. I know that. I don't know the details of what they are actually looking at, but I know this is one of the things they're looking at.
But you'll bear it in mind.
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
C'est un phénomène international, ce n'est pas juste un pays. L'honorable Premier ministre peut-il nous dire si le comité a vérifié que le projet d'autoroute M4 dispose d'une étude d'impact environnemental actuelle, mais surtout pour l'ensemble du projet, c'est-à-dire sur un tracé définitivement arrêté?
In fact, on the 24th of April of this year, an environmental impact assessment report was submitted to the Ministry of Environment, Solid Waste Management and Climate Change. Subsequently, the Ministry provided comments on that EIA report, and in parallel, a detailed project report for the motorway is undergoing an independent review by the Export-Import Bank of India, that is Exim Bank, for financing this project. Following the approval of the detailed project report by the Indian authorities, I understand that the EIA report will be revised as necessary to incorporate comments of the Ministry and any changes arising from the approved report. And therefore, it will be resubmitted to the environment in accordance to the Environment Act.
Okay.
D'un point de vue environnemental, le projet n'est pas encore réellement prêt.
No comments.
L'honorable
Please ask a question.
Premier ministre pourrait confirmer la valeur totale du projet et si les 10,8 milliards concernent uniquement le trajet Forbach-Bel Air.
Yes, in fact, I can confirm that, Madam Speaker. I'm looking whether I can find the exact figure, but I know it's, I can confirm these details.
Yes. Last question.
L'honorable
Yes.
Premier ministre pourrait informer la Chambre comment concrètement ce projet va bénéficier à l'économie locale, c'est-à-dire est-ce que les prestataires seront locaux, mis à part le consultant qui travaille déjà sur le projet depuis plusieurs années. Est-ce que les prestataires pourront être locaux et comment cela va bénéficier concrètement à l'économie locale et à la croissance?
Can you answer this question, Prime Minister?
Answered in my answer, the feeling is that it will definitely benefit us, first of all, for traffic congestion, as I explained earlier on. Secondly, it will create economic activity in that region. It will be paid to local people will get jobs. And thirdly, the tourism sector will benefit as well.
Yes, Mr. Bichuk.
Yes, merci, Madame la Présidente. Can the Honourable Minister please inform the
Prime
House?
Minister.
Prime Minister, please inform the House when this project, which is warmly welcomed by the people of the rural constituencies of number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, start. Thank you.
When can it start?
When we start, it will have to be subject to all these things that it's nearly ready, as Honourable Rona Benganger just said. It's actually nearly ready, but we have to take into consideration what the final report will say and also what the Exim Bank will say.
Yes, Honourable Third Member for Port Louis South and Port Louis Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. B1082.
Madam Speaker, with regards to part A1 and A2 of the question, I'm informed by the Commissioner of Police that from the 1st of January 2021 to the 15th of July 2026, a total of 731 reported cases of crime involving the use of knives, sabers, and other bladed weapons were reported to the police. And of these, 697 persons were injured and 40 persons have lost their lives. In regards to part B of the question, the manufacture, sale, possession of offensive weapons are already regulated under Section 233, 233A, and 233B of the Criminal Code. And the Section 29 of the Criminal Code as well. There's a supplementary act. The Criminal Code inter alia regulates specified offensive weapons such as stilettos, daggers, knives in the shape of daggers, bayonets, and sword sticks, as well as the sale of knives, cutlasses, and other bladed and pointed instruments. The penalties for offences under the Criminal Code are as follows. Section 2331, imprisonment not exceeding 5 years. Section 2332, fine not exceeding 25,000 rupees. Section 233A, a fine not exceeding 25,000 rupees and an imprisonment not exceeding 10 years. Section 233B, a fine not exceeding 25,000 rupees and an imprisonment not exceeding 4 years. Madam Speaker, the Criminal Code Supplementary Act also makes it an offence to possess an offensive weapon in a public place without lawful authority or reasonable excuse. This legislation provides for penalties, including imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years and a fine not exceeding 100,000 rupees. I'm also informed, Madam Speaker, that the police regularly carry out targeted crackdown operations, intelligence-led policing, and joint patrols by the SMF and the SSU in crime-prone areas and in public places to detect, inter alia, to detect and deter the unlawful possession of offensive weapons, including knives and other bladed weapons. These operations form part of the police duties to combat crime and maintain public order. I should add that from January-June of last year, the police have established 65 cases of bearing offensive weapon. Let me also take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to thank PC 5525, Le Gris, for having courageously intervened while he was driving on his motorcycle going home near London supermarket in Bakwa, and he was off duty, but he saw a crowd of people had gathered around an individual who was assaulting a lady with a saber and tried to run his vehicle over that lady. Everyone was watching passively. Nobody was doing anything. He got off his motorbike. He intervened courageously. He intervened. He himself got injured with a weapon, but he still intervened and stopped what was happening. This is the kind of behavior we expect from police officers. And these are the police officers that will be high on the list for promotions. I also wish to make an appeal to people who witness such behavior. They have to take action. They cannot just stand there and watch, because no assistance à des personnes en danger is an offense under our laws.
Yes, one question, yes?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I ask the Honourable Prime Minister whether there will be given due consideration for the regulation of online sales of offensive weapons, swords, daggers, pointed knives, and also firearms, which are becoming something very easily to acquire these days. Thank you.
Certainly, ask the Commissioner of Police to look into that.
You want another question? I could give you 4 if you want. Yes, next question. Wait. Next question, Honourable Second Member for Savane.
Madame la Présidente, s'il vous plaît, B 1083.
Madam Speaker, the House will recall that the State of the Economy document prepared by the Ministry of Finance highlighted the precarious financial position of a number of public bodies and state-owned enterprises. Their substantial and growing indebtedness, together with the increasing contingent liabilities that they pose, particularly in terms of the significant accumulated level of actuarial deficits in their pension funds, constitutes significant risk to the sustainability of public finances. The report further noted that years of inadequate financial oversight and a growing dependence on borrowing had placed considerable strain on government finances, hence the need for decisive actions to restore fiscal discipline, strengthen governance, and improve the financial resilience of these entities. Madam Speaker, according to information compiled by the Ministry of Finance, as at the end of June 2026, 5 parastatal bodies had outstanding loans of a total of 18.6 billion rupees, of which 15.4 billion were from commercial banks and 3.2 billion from other financial institutions. The House will note that under the previous regime, the outstanding debt of parastatal bodies more than doubled, increasing from 6.2 billion as at the end of December 2014, when we were out of office, to 15.9 billion rupees at the end of December 2024. That is practically more than double, in fact. It has more than doubled. Debt had more than doubled. They were just giving money, no control, no fiscal responsibility at all. This sharp increase in indebtedness was driven primarily by both the borrowing requirements of the Central Electricity Board, whose outstanding debt rose from 3.4 billion rupees to 10.3 billion rupees, and the State Trading Corporation, whose debt increased from 1.1 billion to 5.3 billion. This is the kind of government the MSM led. And this we are paying the consequences now. I must also highlight, Madam Speaker, that in addition to these 5 parastatal bodies, a further 20 state-owned enterprises had a total outstanding debt amounting to 48.9 billion rupees as at the end of June of this year. Of this amount, 16.5 billion was owned by commercial banks, while 32.4 billion was from other financial institutions, including 7.2 billion rupees borrowed from the Bank of Mauritius. The level of debt-owned enterprises more than tripled, not double, tripled under the previous government, increasing from 15.1 billion in December 2014 to 54.3 billion rupees at the end of December 2024. The main drivers in this substantial increase in debt were the Metro Express Limited, the Mobank Holdings Limited, and Mauritius Telecom. Amongst others, in addition, the debt levels of the Development Bank of Mauritius, the Industrial Finance Corporation of Mauritius, and the State Investment Corporation Limited increased significantly following the implementation of the various very dubious support schemes introduced in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. These schemes were financed through a line of credit, again provided by the Bank of Mauritius. Madam Speaker, the significant increase in the indebtedness of the parastatal bodies and the state-owned enterprises reflects the consequences of the previous government total lack of fiscal discipline, as I said, and its reckless and systematic failure to control public sector borrowing. The accumulation of debt obligations has placed additional pressure on public finances, reduced fiscal space for priority investments, and increased the government's exposure to financial risk, including contingent liabilities. Madam Speaker, with regard to Part A of the question, since 2020, government has had to provide a total of 14.4 billion rupees as support mainly to the state-owned enterprises so that they can honor the debt repayment obligations. These include 7.9 billion rupees provided by to the National Property Fund in financial year 2020-2021 to enable the company to settle syndicated loans taken for the repayment of super cash back gold scheme policyholders. Another 3.6 billion rupees provided to NPFL during the past 2 financial years to enable the company to repay the line of credit extended by the Bank of Mauritius for the settlement of claims of SCBG policyholders and investors of Brahma Assets Management Limited. C. 1.5 billion provided to the Metro Express Limited since 2021 to enable the company to pay interest on the line of credit from Exim Bank of India for the implementation of the Metro project. And 1.4 billion rupees provided to Mobank Holdings Limited in the financial year 2025-2026 to enable the company to meet its debt obligations towards the African Development Bank Limited and the Mobank Limited. Madam Speaker, if we consider the amounts injected for the repayment to policyholders of the super cash back gold scheme, this comes to a total of 11.4 billion rupees of public money injected under the previous MSM regime. In the aftermath of the deliberate and brutal decision by the previous regime to liquidate the ex-BAI conglomerate, the former Prime Minister and his Minister of Good Governance had publicly stated that not one single rupee from public funds would be injected into any bailout activity. Blinded by the political vendetta, their action led to a direct hit on the public sector debt. This is the truth, Madam Speaker. It turned out, they said no rupee from the public funds. It turned out that the then Minister of Public Good Governance, it was a lie, a total lie, because I mentioned the figure that was used from public funds. Billions of rupees, Madam Speaker, billions of rupees from public funds were used. It was a deliberate lie, and today some are trying to get political virginity as if they are saints. These are the people that we have to be careful about, and I hope the population of Mauritius will remember all those things when the time comes. In this financial year, a total provision of 1.9 billion rupees has been made to provide funds to Mobank Holdings Limited and Metro Express Limited to enable them to meet their debt repayment obligations. Clearly, Madam Speaker, the situation underscores urgent need. There is an urgent need for corrective measures in order to save the long-term financial sustainability of our parastatal and state-owned enterprises. With regard to Part B of the question, I'm informed that a number of public bodies are currently preparing or implementing restructuring plans aimed at strengthening the financial position, involving operational sustainability and minimizing the impact on public finances. These will include Metro Express Limited, which is currently preparing a transformation plan focused on enhancing its financial performance by strengthening operational efficiency and diversifying revenue streams. B. Mauritius Post Limited is expanding its sources of revenue and optimizing its branch network. As part of these measures, the prices of postage stamps and the fees charged for the repayment of utility bills have already been revised upwards. C. Mobank Holdings Limited is currently working on measures to accelerate recoveries of arrears in loan repayments, expenditure rationalization, review of fees charged and the disposal of its non-core assets. And D, the Development Bank of Mauritius is reviewing its processes and procedures for recovery of arrears, revamping the loan and leasing products, and monetizing its unused building space. The bank has already reviewed the interest rate charge on loans and leasing facilities. Madam Speaker, as announced in the 2026-2027 budget speech, a steering committee on public sector efficiency, which I will chair, will be established to identify areas of duplication, inefficiency, and waste across the public sector. Every ministry and department will be required to submit to the committee a concrete action plan setting out measures to enhance efficiency and eliminate waste while maintaining the quality and continuity of public service delivery. Madam Speaker, government remains committed to restoring the financial sustainability of public bodies and strengthening fiscal discipline across the public sector. The restructuring measures being implemented are intended to improve operational efficiency, enhance financial performance, and reduce reliance on government support. These reforms will contribute to safeguarding public finances while ensuring that public bodies continue to deliver essential services effectively and sustainably.
Thank you. Do you have a question? Yes? No? Okay. Yes, of course.
Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente. Would the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House who was the Minister of Good Governance at that time? Thank you.
We all know it was Mr. Woshibade.
Thank you. Thank you. I will, first of all, honourable members, we have been advised that B1084 has been withdrawn. Next, I will allow one last question. That's Honourable Fourth Member for Rodrigue. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. B1085, please.
Madam Speaker, as regards to part A of the question, as the House is aware, in January 2022, the Government of the Republic of India provided a grant of 400 million rupees for the implementation of small development projects. Out of this grant, an amount of 19 million rupees has been allocated for the implementation of infrastructural and sustainable development projects in Rodrigue. I can table the list. It's a bit long, otherwise I can read it, but I propose to table the list of projects being funded under the Indian grant for Rodrigues Island, including the completion dates. As regards to part B of the question, it is to be noted that funds are released by the Government of India on a reimbursement basis. At that date, some 18.4 million rupees has been spent, of which 13 million in financial year 2024-2025, and the remaining 5.4 million in financial year 2025-2026. As regards part C of the question, I'm informed that by the Rodrigues Regional Assembly, that the provision of 1 million for the financial year 2026-2027 relates to retention money in respect to the Eau Claire Community Center project.
Thank you. Yes. Now, table has been advised that following PQs have been withdrawn: B1086, B1088, B1091. Qu'est-ce qui se passe? Okay. Now we go to questions addressed to honourable ministers. Honourable Third Member for Beaubassin, Petit-Trivial.
1093.
Madame la Présidente, avec votre permission, je répondrai ensemble aux questions B1093 et B1111 de l'honorable KZN. Madame la Présidente, Correct est une application numérique dotée d'un service de signalement des fuites d'eau. Elle permet au public de signaler directement les fuites en indiquant leur localisation et en joignant des photos. Cette plateforme permet également aux utilisateurs de suivre l'état de leur signalement en temps réel. Au niveau de la CWA, la plateforme de signalement numérique devrait améliorer la gestion des opérations de réparation des fuites en permettant la réception, l'enregistrement, l'attribution et le suivi rapide des fuites signalées. Elle complète également les canaux de signalement des plaintes déjà disponibles à la CWA, le CIEX. Madame la Présidente, depuis le lancement de l'application Correct, j'ai appris qu'entre le 13 et le 16 juillet 2026, la CWA a reçu 39 signalements de fuites d'eau sur la plateforme. Les fuites signalées sont évaluées, classées selon leur gravité, leur impact opérationnel, leurs conséquences sur la sécurité publique et le volume d'eau perdue. La CWA m'informe également que l'application classe les fuites par niveau de gravité, faible, moyen, élevé, critique. Les fuites critiques sont supposées faire l'objet d'une intervention immédiate afin de minimiser les pertes d'eau et de rétablir l'approvisionnement. Les fuites de gravité moyenne élevées sont considérées comme urgentes et peuvent s'aggraver rapidement si elles ne sont pas traitées. C'est pourquoi le délai d'intervention est supposé être de 24 heures. La catégorie faible concerne les fuites courantes. Il s'agit des défauts mineurs présentant des risques opérationnels ou la sécurité minime et ayant un impact limité sur l'approvisionnement en eau. Ils doivent être réparés dans les 72 heures, ce qui est souvent pas le cas. Madame la Présidente, concernant les points B et C de la question 1093, la CWA m'informe qu'elle a actuellement 42 équipes internes, soit 126 agents répartis sur l'ensemble des zones d'approvisionnement, les 6 zones du pays, en eau. Ces équipes sont déployées quotidiennement pour intervenir en cas de fuite signalée. Madame la Présidente, afin de renforcer ses capacités opérationnelles, suite à l'introduction de Correct, la CWA propose de faire appel à des entreprises spécialisées privées pour les travaux de réparation des fuites, en complément de ses équipes internes. À cet égard, les dossiers d'appel d'offres pour les contrats de réparation des fuites sont en cours de finalisation au niveau de la CWA. Cette stratégie garantira la disponibilité de ressources dédiées à la réparation des fuites. Donc une équipe dans chaque zone pour réparer les fuites, que pour réparer les fuites. En améliorant ainsi les délais d'intervention, qui sont bien plus longs de ce qu'on préconise, réduisant le nombre de fuites en attente, permettant une intervention rapide. Pour la zone d'approvisionnement d'eau dans le Nord, le contrat a été attribué déjà et les travaux devraient commencer d'ici fin juillet 2026. Donc, une équipe pour le Nord en ce qui concerne la réparation des fuites, outre l'équipe interne. Pour les autres zones, la procédure d'appel d'offres est en cours et les contrats devraient être attribués d'ici fin août 2026. Les entreprises sous-traitées devraient intervenir sur 15 fuites par jour.
Yes, Mr. Kiran.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. L'honorable ministre peut-il indiquer à la Chambre si de nouveaux véhicules, équipements, matériels ont été acquis afin de renforcer les équipes d'intervention de la CWA?
Et nous avons des équipes internes, des équipes internes dont nous avons 126 agents, donc qui sont équipés pour travailler avec les véhicules que nous avons, Mais ce que nous allons faire, c'est que nous allons aussi prendre des contracteurs privés dans chaque zone. Donc les contracteurs privés vont être là avec leur transport, avec leurs équipements, avec la main-d'œuvre et aussi des ouvriers qualifiés pour pouvoir intervenir rapidement, d'après Correct, selon la gravité des fuites. Donc, bien souvent, moi personnellement, je rapporte des cas. Beaucoup de ministres, beaucoup de personnes me rapportent des cas et je rapporte ces cas-là, CWA, mais je dirais que les interventions, bien souvent, tardent. Je ne suis pas personnellement satisfait, ça tarde des fois. Donc, dépendant de la gravité, s'il y a des gravités quand même critiques, nous demandons à ce que l'équipe interne de la CWA intervienne assez rapidement, mais pour répondre à ce que Correct va mettre de suppléments sur la plateforme, nous avons décidé de prendre des contracteurs privés pour intervenir.
Monsieur Kazan.
Madam Speaker, although I fully welcome the measures announced by the Minister, may I ask the Honourable Minister to indicate whether an escalation mechanism will be established for water leakage that remain unattended beyond a prescribed period. As he mentioned, some leakages are supposed to be resolved within a period of 24 hours. Thank you.
Je dirais que selon le protocole de la CWA, critique, moyen, faible, élevé, mais supposé être 24 heures. Ben, je mentirais si je le dirais à la Chambre qu'effectivement la CWA agit en 24 heures. Donc, bon, on me donne des dizaines de raisons. L'équipe était ailleurs, il y a eu pas mal de fuites, et nous avons dû intervenir sur des sites critiques. Mais que ce soit 24 heures, que ce soit 72 heures, je sais très bien que bien souvent on n'arrive pas à tenir. C'est pour cette raison que la décision a été prise de renforcer l'équipe. Mais disons que correct va nous permettre de suivre en temps réel, sur cette plateforme, en temps réel, ce qui se passe quand quelqu'un signale une fuite quelque part en temps réel, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé après 12 heures, 13 heures, 24 heures. Donc nous avons avec correct cette possibilité de suivre.
Yes.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Donc il est clair que le nombre de cas signalés par le public va certainement augmenter suite à la mise en place de l'application correcte. Donc de ce fait, l'honorable ministre peut-il préciser si la CWA suit des indicateurs de performance pour chaque équipe de réparation et si ces résultats sont régulièrement évalués?
Oui. Les résultats sont régulièrement évalués. Oui. Oui, mais cela vaut ce que cela vaut à la CWA. Vous savez? Donc, je mentirai encore une fois pour dire que tout est rose, tout est bon. Loin de là. C'est pour cette raison que j'ai demandé au conseil d'administration de louer les services des contacteurs privés qui seront tenus de faire 15 fuites par jour. Donc, l'équipe de la CWA ne fait pas que des fuites. L'équipe de la CWA fait entre autres les fuites, mais autre chose aussi, les raccordements, autre chose. Donc, c'est pour cette raison que nous avons des rapports venant de la CWA en nous disant que oui, effectivement, ils l'ont fait. Pour vous donner un exemple, permettez-moi, Madame la Présidente, j'ai reçu l'équipe du Nord avec le ministre Oudjit et l'honorable Roukni dans la semaine concernant les problèmes dans la circonscription numéro 5 du Premier ministre. J'étais étonné, stomaqué d'entendre qu'il y avait une pièce à changer et les gens de la circonscription numéro 5 m'ont fait savoir que la pièce qu'on changeait, mais la pièce était endommagée le lendemain. Donc en 4 reprises, il fallait refouiller, rechanger. J'ai fait appeler les responsables de la CWA en présence des 2 honorables membres et on m'a confirmé effectivement que cette pièce est défectueuse. Et là, j'ai fait demander combien de ces pièces nous avons actuellement pour le pays. On m'a dit on a 6000 unités dans le store. Nous avons fait une commande de 24 000. J'ai demandé au general manager du CUB et de la CWA, mais qu'est-ce que vous avez fait depuis? Depuis que vous avez su, depuis 1 mois, vous savez déjà que la pièce ne pouvait pas être servie. Il a fait savoir au procurement. J'ai dit que je suis nullement satisfait. Nullement satisfait. Et là, les 6000 pièces défectueuses vont être retournées au quincaillerie et on va devoir changer. Pour vous donner une idée comment cela a été pendant longtemps.
OK. Honorable Third Member for Grand B.
Merci Madame la Présidente. B1094, s'il vous plaît.
Madam Speaker, I'm informed that on the 17th December 2020, a memorandum of understanding was signed between the then Ministry of Youth, Empowerment, Sport and Recreation and EVACO Limited for the construction of a football ground, a pétanque court, and outdoor gym. a kid corner and related amenities and infrastructure on a plot of land of some 13,000 square meters, which is vested in my ministry at Chemin 20 Pieds, Cap Malheureux. I'm informed that as of date, only the football ground and fencing around the football has been completed. Infrastructural works, such as the construction of the changing room, administrative block and stand, are still pending, as well as the construction of other amenities, such as outdoor gym, kid corner, among others. Since May 2025, regular meetings and follow-up were made by my ministry with the company for the completion of the project. Unfortunately, in May 2026, Evaco Limited was placed under receivership. Madam Speaker, in view of this situation, our ministry saw the advice of the Attorney General Office on the 12th June 2026 regarding the MOU signed with the company on the 23rd June 2026. The Solicitor General advised my ministry that the receiver manager of Evaco Limited be informed that my ministry no longer wishes to proceed with the construction of the amenities as per the MOU, taking into consideration the present circumstances, and the necessary procedures will be undertaken for taking back the plot of land. Accordingly, on 6 July 2026, my ministry issued a letter to the joint receiver and managers of Evaco Limited, requesting them to inform whether the project would be completed as planned. They were further informed that should they not proceed with the completion of the project, my ministry would initiate necessary action to retrieve the said plot of land. The managers have, on 16 July 2026, verbally informed my ministry that they have duly received the letter and official reply will be made in 2 weeks' time. Madam Speaker, it is to be noted that the public is authorized to use the football playground for physical activities. It is also used for the École de Foot, where training sessions for young players are regularly conducted. Temporary solar floodlights have also been installed for the use of the playground in low light conditions.
Yes, one question, yes?
Yeah, can the Honourable Minister provide information on the reasons why the MOU was signed between the Ministry of Sports and Evaco at the first stage?
Madam Speaker, I'm informed that a toss track committee was being chaired by the former Prime Minister in 2018 for facilitating implementation of property development project. One of the projects on the agenda of that committee was the development of 163 residential units, 54 duplexes, restaurant and retail spaces on freehold land and an extent of 45A30P at Cap Malheureux by the Evaco Limited under the Property Development Scheme. The proposed project was adjacent to the public football ground located on the extent of state land of 4,350 m², vested in the Ministry of Youth and Sport, part of the public football ground, to an extent of 1,500 meters square, was overlapping the proposed PDS project, which ultimately affected the construction of 4 villas by Evaco Limited. The promoter has requested in June 2018 the Ministry of Housing and Land the following: to lease state land on an extent of 5,820 meters square for the development of a football ground and related amenities located adjacent to the Cap Malere Government School, to lease state land of an extent of 1,500 meters square, which was vested in the Ministry of Youth and Sport for the construction of the Badminton Sports Center. In December 2018, the Ministry of Housing and Land issued a correspondence to Evaco Limited, copied to the Ministry of Youth and Sports, regarding its no objection for the latter ministry to allow the promoter to construct a badminton center, 1,500 meters, over part of the existing football ground. On the other hand, the promoter would construct a new football ground with related infrastructure comprising, among others, a petanque court, jogging track, and state land vested in the Ministry of Youth and Sport, located adjacent to the Cap Malere Government School. A memorandum of understanding was accordingly signed in December 2020. However, as at date, only the football playground and fencing have been constructed around the playground within the length of an extent of 13,361 meters square, vested in the Ministry of Youth and Sport and located adjacent to the Cap Malere Government School.
Okay, you have another question? No. Okay, we will now break for 1.5 hours.
Please be seated. The Honorable Third Member for Caution Amoka.
B1095, please.
Deputy Speaker, sir, I would like to present my apologies because I have a sore throat. I am informed that the road marking
Try to be short then because of your voice.
No, but the reply is what it's going to be because it's quite technical. I am informed that the road marking team of the TRMSU operates with a local workforce of 8 employees consisting of 3 painters and 5 tradesmen assistants. To maximize its efficiency, the team executes road safety and traffic management improvements through 2 distinct operational arms, that is, an in-house civil works team, and secondly, an in-house road marking team, which does center lines, edge lines, yellow lines, pedestrian crossings, and directional arrows, which are critical to road safety. Deputy Speaker, sir, for major, highly specialized and large-scale projects, my ministry avails the services of 2 specialized contractors under a framework agreement. The services of these contractors are engaged to supplement our in-house capacity. For the benefit of the House, I wish to clarify that the statutory responsibility for the maintenance of road markings, Deputy Speaker, sir, is clearly demarcated under Section 4 of the Road Traffic Act, Section 28 of the Road Traffic Act, and Section 52A of the Local Government Act. Under these legal frameworks, the statutory responsibility for the remarking and maintenance of road markings is explicitly divided based on road classification. That is, for classified roads and main roads, it is under the responsibility of the Road Development Authority, and for subsidiary and secondary roads under the local government, meaning municipal council, municipal council and village councils. Right? I'm stressing on this point because time and again there's a misconception from among the public that the 3RMSU or my ministry is responsible for all of that, but that is not the case. The law is very clear on this. More, Deputy Speaker, sir, as a matter of established operational practice, the TRMSU holds direct responsibility for the initial provision, however, and layout of road markings associated with on-street parking restrictions, while the ongoing upkeep and maintenance of all lines, like I said earlier, falls under the responsibility of the Highway Authority. Now, furthermore, the TRMSU retains the end-to-end operational responsibility. Turning to Part A of the question, Deputy Speaker, sir, I am tabling a copy of the scheme of service of painters and tradesmen's assistants, which is here. I would like to highlight that the daily output of the road marking team is governed by a predetermined, approved task work, sir. Regarding Part B of the question, Deputy Speaker, sir, the road marking team is deployed island-wide. My ministry receives a vast number of requests from MPs, local authorities, public bodies, and citizens. Given our current in-house manpower and budgetary provisions, it is not always possible to satisfy every request. However, we do our best, right, within the budgetary. So I'm nearing soon. While all requests are made, are fully justified and have some degree of urgency, and it is tackled on a case-to-case basis. Deputy Speaker, sir, in response to Part C of the question, I am informed that establishment of road marking teams consists of 3 permanent painters, 2 permanent tradesmen assistant, and 3 temporary tradesmen assistant. None of these positions are currently held on contract basis, as originally thought in the question.
Yes.
Will the Minister inform the House the time frame between the approval and the implementation of the road markings and raised pedestrian crossing?
Like I said, if it is a matter of urgency, I can talk to the honourable member. And if the team at the localities there are not, performing to the extent possible, Honourable Arkechil also spoke to me lately, I'm going to perhaps contemplate a reshufflement of engineers and technical officers so that, things get moving in a more dynamic way.
The Honourable Third Member for Vieux-Grand-Port, Roosevelt.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. PQB 1096.
Thank you very much, sir. Honourable Member. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I'm informed that out of the 14 fisheries posts under the purview of the Ministry, 3 are located in the constituency number 11, Vieux-Grand-Port and Roosevelt, namely Grand Port Southeast Fisheries Post, Bambou-Vieilleux Fisheries Post, and Mayberg Fisheries Post. Now, a total of 21 applications for fishermen cards have been received at these 3 fisheries posts during the past year. 5 applications at Grande-Rivière Southeast, 8 applications at Bambou-Vieilleux, and 8 applications at Mayberg. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I'm informed that all these 21 applications cannot be processed for the time being as they do not meet the eligible criteria as follows, and I will highlight those criteria. The applicant fishers ought to have submitted a valid certificate of character. Unfortunately, none of them has submitted such a certificate. 2, the applicant fisher has to submit a recommendation letter from a registered line and fish aggregating device off-lagoon fisher, attesting that the applicant fisher is fishing along with the registered fisher in his boat. Now, in 16 applications, the applicants have not submitted such a recommendation letter. The fishing activities of the applicant fisher shall be monitored for a consecutive period of 6 months, and the fisher shall have fished at least 75% of the fishing days, excluding bad weather days, Sundays, and public holidays in a month. None of these 16 applicant fishers has provided a record of the catch, and therefore they are deemed not to be engaged in fishing activities. The applicants have been informed to submit the required documents, following which the applications will be considered. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I refer the Honourable Member to replies made to PQ-B/987 at the sitting of 11th November 2025 and PQ-B/38 at the sitting of 17th March 2026, respectively, where I had informed the House that our lagoons have been overexploited and depleted over the years. In fact, during the period 2022-2024, a total of 1,190 fishermen cards were issued, out of which 709 fishermen cards were issued in the year 2024 only. It is to be highlighted that in September 2024, 416 new fishermen were issued just prior to general elections. Now, with a view to allow lagoons to rejuvenate, registered artisanal fishers are being encouraged to fish off lagoon and around fish aggregating devices. Grant of 300,000 rupees per eligible fisher for the purchase of canot and 1 million rupees for individual fisher for the purchase of semi-industrial fishing vessels are being provided. 6 million are being allocated to cooperative societies for the purchase of semi-industrial fishing vessels of less than 24 meters.
Yes.
I thank the Honourable Minister. From a reply to a previous PQ addressed to the Honourable Minister, I recall that it was not a prerequisite to obtain a valid certificate, save and except for conviction in respect of drug dealing cases. Is that still the case?
No, drug dealing cases, of course, we cannot entertain. But in relation to what you've said, I have taken up the issue with the officers and the Permanent Secretary. This is the advice and reply given to me. But nothing stops us. If you want to come to the office, we certainly can have a talk and see what can be done to entertain some of the applications of some of the apprentice fishers. All right?
Yes.
Could the Honourable Minister indicate to the House whether his ministry intends, obviously I've taken note of his reply, but whether his ministry intends to issue new fishermen's card, and if so, a timeline as to say?
No. If there are cases which deserve to be processed, no problem. If there are deserving cases. Otherwise, I've highlighted the problem that you're currently facing. Our lagoon is depleted, and we have to allow, our lagoons to be restored, giving it the necessary time and measures taken to allow to.
The Honourable Third Member for Portlaoise South and Portlaoise Central.
B1097, please.
Monsieur le Vice-président. Et le règlement 2026, donc sur l'efficacité énergétique, est entré en vigueur le 1er mai 2026 et demeurera applicable jusqu'au 1er novembre 2026. Ce règlement vise à limiter l'utilisation de l'électricité du réseau pour certaines activités non essentielles, notamment l'éclairage décoratif, l'illumination extérieure des bâtiments lorsqu'elle n'est pas requise pour des raisons de sécurité, l'utilisation de la climatisation dans les locaux non résidentiels à une température de 24 degrés, ainsi que le maintien de l'éclairage des terrains de jeu extérieurs lorsqu'ils ne sont pas utilisés. Il convient de souligner que ces dispositions ne s'appliquent pas au secteur résidentiel. De même, les services essentiels et les infrastructures critiques telles que les hôpitaux, les cliniques, les aéroports, etc., ne sont exemptés de ces restrictions. Cette mesure a été approuvée par le gouvernement dans le contexte des tensions géopolitiques persistantes au Moyen-Orient et de leurs répercussions sur les marchés mondiaux. Elle vise à atténuer les effets de la volatilité des prix du fuel. Monsieur le Vice-président, concernant la partie A de la question, le règlement vise une réduction durable de la demande d'électricité d'environ 5 MW par jour. D'environ 5 MW. En hiver, on arrive à le faire. J'espère qu'en été, c'est le cas. Sur l'ensemble de la période d'application, soit le 1er mai au 1er novembre 2026, cette réduction devrait permettre une économie estimée à 4500 tonnes métriques de fuel HFO. 4500 métriques tonnes. Monsieur le Vice-président, les mesures que comprennent notamment ces règlements, un système de signalement par le public, donc un numéro de téléphone, la collaboration de la police, nous travaillons en collaboration, IMO et la police, des inspections ciblées sur le terrain, des actions de sensibilisation et d'information. Concernant la partie B de la question, je tiens à préciser que le règlement prévoit une approche progressive en matière d'application, privilégiant d'abord les mesures correctives avant toute sanction. Lorsqu'un cas de non-conformité est constaté, à la suite d'une inspection et après réception d'une plainte, l'IMO de mon ministère émet un avis formel de conformité, précisant la nature de l'infraction et accordant généralement un délai de 5 jours pour y remédier. Monsieur le Vice-président, l'IMO, comme je le disais un peu plus tôt, privilégie avant tout une approche basée sur la sensibilisation, la coopération et l'accompagnement des opérateurs. Donc, depuis l'entrée en vigueur du règlement, nous avons eu 92 plaintes qui ont été enregistrées, 81 inspections ont été réalisées. L'IMO a émis 29 avis de conformité. Parmi les organisations concernées, 17 ont déjà mis en œuvre les mesures correctives, donc c'est un bon signe, et informé l'IMO. Des inspections de suivi sont actuellement en cours de vérifier, et actuellement, il n'y a aucune poursuite.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. May I ask the Honourable Minister whether his ministry will consider extending this program after the 1st of November this year, taking into consideration the whims and fancies of the warring parties in the Middle East, particularly the Strait of Hormuz.
Disons que ce règlement c'est pour 6 mois. J'ai amené ça au cabinet au Conseil des ministres qui a été approuvé pour 6 mois dans le cadre de ce qui s'est passé au Moyen-Orient avec le prix des cargaisons que nous recevons. Certainement, nous allons étudier l'IMO, Marina et le CEB vont étudier la possibilité d'extendre. Si c'est nécessaire d'extendre, on va extendre, bien sûr.
OK, last one.
May I ask the Honourable Minister whether his ministry will consider the mandatory use of solar panel to lighten public designs, publicities on malls, shopping malls, and also on classified roads.